Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, however you're joining us. We're glad you're here. Thank you for tuning in again for another Bible study on this emotion we call anger. As you know, we have been doing this video regarding an emotion called anger, and we are doing it out of a book called Overcoming Emotions That Destroy by Chip Ingram. It's been a great journey being able to go down this journey together in being able to see these emotions that are within us that could actually do some great damage to some of the relationships that we have within our family. As you know, the holidays did pass, and there are some family members who did not meet because of an emotion that they have, that they carry with them, and they've been carrying it for years. And typically it's because of anger. And today, this video it comes in at the right season because we're able to piggyback off of the Christmas holiday, and where we discover that there are some people who do not gather because of an instance that something took place. So our responsibility in this Bible study through this video is for us to be able to find a way so that we could mend these broken relationships. So we have to know that there is a good side of anger. I know that in the last few years we may have thought that anger is a bad thing, but today we want to turn the tables and begin to start seeing that anger is actually a good thing. As you know, in the last few years, I believe it was 2020, where we had many fires that ended up sweeping across the state of California, and you would still, if you would drive up to certain places, you could still see the burn scars up there. And as the rain comes down, you could also see that there are many warnings that take place because of the rain could actually trigger a landslide because of all of the ash and all of the debris that was left behind. So we could see that all of that stuff came about because of a fire. Well, many of you guys may live in a home where you use fire to cook something. Back in my days, I'm not sure if they still do it now, but we used to have a gas stove, and at that gas stove is where we would heat our food, where we would cook it, and from there we would be able to take it to the table and have ourselves a fresh hot meal. Now, in order for that meal to be cooked, there had to be fire. Now, I want you to make a comparison between the two fires I was talking about. We were talking about an out of control fire that led to a disaster, that could lead to landslides, and it could lead to a whole bunch of trouble, right? That's a fire that's burning out of control. But a controlled fire is we're able to benefit from. So that's how I want you to look at anger. Anger that is out of control damages things. Anger that is controlled can be beneficial. What we have to recognize is that whenever anger is out of control, that's called a stronghold. And a stronghold is something that controls you, and it's something that you cannot break. And it's our responsibility through this video series to be able to help you understand that you can break this stronghold. Because the Bible says that in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3 through 5, it says that we take all the thoughts captive, and that we bring them into the submission of Christ. And we rise and we bring down every imagination unto the obedience of Christ. So we've got to recognize that even an emotion called anger could still be brought under control. So here's some pointers I want to share with you, and just a recap of what took place in the last few weeks. Just again, to give you a recap, because I know we haven't talked in a while. And that is that, number one, we have to admit that we're angry. We have to admit that we're angry. Number two, we have to backtrack to see what ended up getting us angry. There was something that somebody did or an emotion that we're feeling that caused us to get angry. Now, what we've got to do is we have to get to step number 3, and that is to discover what was the main thing that ended up causing us to be able to act in an angry way. Now, You might typically think that anger is just the that it is that it's the reason it's the reason why we're the main reason why we're flying off the handle. No, remember what we talked about. Anger is the tip of the iceberg. Remember the tip of the iceberg, but there's more on the bottom. So what we've got to do, we got to discover what's at the bottom of our anger. There's some underlining emotions. Like, you might be angry because deep down on the inside you were lonely, you were sad, or you were disappointed. But because you do not want to talk about your main emotion, about being sad, about being lonely, or being disappointed, you just revert to anger. So we got to remember that the reason why we're angry, it's because there's something going on the bottom, and that's what we got to discover, right? So now that we know what's causing us to get angry, we have to deal with it in the best way. People get angry because of an emotion. So, like I said earlier, instead of them talking about an area that they're not happy with, or an emotion that would make them sound as if they were in some sort of way weak, they just prefer to show their strength through their anger. But showing anger is actually a sign of weakness because they are not able to manage their emotions correctly. Now, we talked about discovering the emotion behind the anger, but we're going to take it a little step further. We're going to talk about who ended up getting you angry. Who made you feel sad? Who made you feel lonely? Who made you feel disappointed? Now you're getting a picture, right? Now that you know what it was or who it was, the question is how are you going to react? Are you going to confront it? Are you going to take action? Are you going to be impulsive? Are you going to just fly off the handle and apologize later? Or are you going to conceal it? Are you going to adapt? Are you going to retreat? Or are you not going to engage? You know, just because somebody challenges you doesn't mean that you need to engage. Just because somebody gets you angry, it does not mean that you need to engage either. It is your responsibility to practice self-control and to find out if it's even worth your time. And on top of that too, if you desire to say, I'm going to deal with this later, well, think about how you're going to deal with it. Are you going to take care of it in person, or are you going to take care of it in a letter? There's two ways you could deal with it, right? You could deal with the person individually, or you could write a letter. Now, I've heard about people when they get angry, they just write it down on a paper, and then they just grab that paper and they just throw it out. Maybe they just need to put their emotions on paper and just get it out of their system and just say, finally, I'm free. Finally, I'm glad I did something with that emotion instead of bearing it on the inside. But then that doesn't work too well. Sometimes you have to talk to the offender and make it clear that you were offended. Now, remember what the Bible says is that sometimes we do have to turn the other cheek, right? Other times we have to confront things. So learn the right way on how to confront something. The Bible says that if we have offended somebody, it's our responsibility to go, right? So we have to do it. We have to confront the conflict, right? But you also have to do it with wisdom too. You got to know when to do it. When's the right time? Do you do it in the heat of the moment, or do you wait for things to calm down and where everybody's level-headed and say, okay, let's get back to the table and let's talk about it? Remember what Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1 says, there is a time and a season for everything. And God will reveal to you the season and the time in which the conversation needs to take place, or when you need to deal with it. The main thing is, if he's saying to deal with it, do it in a healthy way. Number two, don't get ahead of God either. If he is telling you, let it go, then let it go. I know sometimes we want to go ahead and we want to say no. We want to prove our point and we want to do our part. But there's some times where we just have to put things in the hands of God and say, God, you know what? We're just going to let you deal with it. And that's when trust comes in and that's when faith comes in. And we are called to trust in God, not lean on our own understandings, and to also put our faith in him, because without faith, we cannot please God. Remember, just because you're offended does not mean that you cannot trust God in the middle of the offense. God bless you.